In 1953, in Kansas City, Missouri, the Greenlease family faced a haunting and shocking kidnapping. 6-year-old Bobby Greenlease was abducted by an unknown woman on a fateful afternoon. The woman took him to a modest white wooden house located in the St. Joseph Cave area, also in Missouri. Soon after, the family began receiving ransom letters and phone calls demanding an enormous sum of money for Bobby's safe return. This case was filled with unexpected twists and kept people on edge with its dramatic developments. Who was behind this kidnapping? Would Bobby ever make it back home safely? This is a troubling story we will explore together. Kansas City, located in the western part of Missouri with a population of over 500,000, is the largest city in the state. In the 1950s, in the Mission Hills neighborhood of Kansas City, a wealthy man named Robert Greenlease lived a lavish life, possessing everything he desired. He was a well-known car dealer with dealerships spread across the United States. Through his pioneering efforts in introducing General Motors cars to the Great Plains in the early 20th century, he amassed a massive fortune. However, his life changed dramatically on February 3, 1953, with the birth of his son. They named him Robert Bobbick Ross Grove Greenlease, but he was commonly called Bobby. Bobby's mother, Virginia Pollock, was Robert's second wife. The Greenlease family lived in luxury, and Bobby was not their only child. He had an older sister, Virginia, born in 1941, and a half-brother named Paul, born in 1917. From a young age, Bobby attended the prestigious Notre Dame de Sion school on Warnall Avenue in Kansas City. Here, he grew up and studied alongside other children, with a future that seemed full of promise. But fate had other plans for him. On the morning of September 28, 1953, Bobby went to Notre Dame de Sion school as usual. However, around noon, a nun named Moran witnessed a plump woman arriving at the school gate, claiming to be Bobby's aunt. The woman explained that Bobby's mother, Virginia, had suddenly suffered a heart attack while out shopping and was rushed to Trinity Lutheran Hospital. She said the Greenlease family had instructed her to immediately bring Bobby to visit his mother. Without a second thought, Sister Moran led Bobby out of class. As the boy held the stranger's hand and got into a taxi, Sister Moran sighed and watched them leave, believing everything had been properly arranged. Little did anyone know that the woman was not Bobby's aunt, and what happened that day would forever change the Greenlease family's life. Less than an hour after Bobby was taken by the mysterious woman, Virginia received a phone call from Sister Martha Anna, another nun at Bobby's school. The nun called the Greenlease household to confirm whether Virginia had truly been hospitalized due to a heart attack. However, the truth quickly became clear. Virginia had not been hospitalized, nor had she suffered a heart attack. Both the nun and Virginia immediately realized that something was amiss. They understood that Bobby had been kidnapped. After the conversation with the nun, Virginia contacted her husband, Robert, and explained everything. Robert immediately reported the kidnapping to the police and sought the FBI's assistance. News of Bobby's abduction spread quickly, plunging the family into panic. Authorities launched a large-scale search, but without any leads on the kidnapper, hope began to fade as time passed. On the same day that Bobby was abducted, his parents received the first ransom letter. The letter, signed M, demanded $600,000, equivalent to more than $6 million today. Not only that, but the kidnapper also insisted that the money be paid in unmarked $10 bills. The police began their search for the mysterious M. The following day, September 29, 1953, another ransom letter arrived, this time with a pin that Bobby had been wearing on the day he was kidnapped. To ensure his son's safety, Robert decided to raise the ransom money himself. He reached out to friends and business partners, including Arthur Eisenhower, the Executive Vice President of Commerce Trust Company, who was also the brother of the U.S. President at the time. One of Eisenhower's tasks was to have the bank staff record the serial numbers of all the bills to be used for the ransom payment. These serial numbers were later published in newspapers across the country. As the family worked to gather the enormous sum the kidnapper demanded, the agonizing wait for news of Bobby's safety seemed endless. During this time, a man repeatedly called the Greenlease household, telling Virginia that her son was still alive. The kidnapper seemed to be enjoying this cruel game, while the family sank deeper into despair. In just 1 week, the family received a total of 6 ransom letters and 15 phone calls. They agreed to follow the kidnapper's every instruction. However, it wasn't long before they realized they had made a mistake. By the evening of October 4th, 1953, Robert had gathered the full $600,000 ransom. The money was placed in a suitcase and taken to a bridge near Highway 40, east of Kansas City. This was the largest ransom ever paid in U.S. history at the time. The next morning, the kidnapper contacted the Greenlease family, confirming they had received the money and promising to release Bobby within 24 hours. But as the day passed, there was still no word about the boy. The family anxiously waited, but their hopes began to fade. They started to wonder if their son was still alive or if the kidnapper had deceived them. The next 24 hours became the most heartbreaking period of their lives. As the search for Bobby continued, a former criminal and taxi driver named Joe Carr was about to play a crucial role in the investigation. Carr had been hired by Carl Austin Hall, a newcomer to the city, to be his personal driver in St. Louis. From what Carr knew, Hall was a reckless spender who lived like a king. Hall rented an apartment, bought new clothes, and enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. Suspicious of Hall's behavior, Carr decided to contact Joe Costello, the owner of his taxi company. Costello had ties to the underground world and the St. Louis Police Department. On the evening of October 6, 1953, Costello tipped off the police about a man in St. Louis who was in possession of a large amount of suspicious money. The police immediately went to Hall's apartment and arrested him. There, officers found 2 metal boxes filled with cash. Hall was taken to the Newstead police station in North St. Louis for questioning about the source of the money. Initially, Hall insisted he had done nothing wrong, but investigators quickly pieced together the clues. They suspected Hall's involvement in the Greenlease kidnapping due to the large sum of money he had. After an intense interrogation, Hall finally broke down and confessed his role in the crime. But the most horrifying truth had yet to be revealed. When asked about Bobby's whereabouts, Hall admitted that the boy was dead. He revealed that he did not act alone, but had an accomplice named Bonnie Hetty, another woman. The two had planned to kidnap Bobby to extort money from his wealthy family. Through Hall's confession and the detailed investigation, the police were able to reconstruct the timeline of the case, revealing shocking details. Hall came from a well-off family, the son of a lawyer. After his parents passed away, he inherited 1,100 acres of land in Princeton, Missouri, along with a large estate. However, Hall squandered his inheritance and was eventually sent to prison for robbing a taxi driver of $38. While in prison, he dreamed of pulling off a big heist to live comfortably for the rest of his life. That was when he remembered the Greenlease family's wealth. Years earlier, Hall had attended military school with Paul, Bobby's older brother, and knew that this family was very wealthy. Hall quickly devised a plan to extort ransom money, and the only thing left to figure out was how to kidnap the child. That's when Bonnie Hetty entered the picture. Bonnie was an ambitious woman. Her first husband was a bank robber who died in a police shootout. Her second marriage was no better, but she inherited a house after the divorce. It was at the Robidoux Hotel bar in Missouri where Bonnie met Hall. After several months of acquaintance, Hall began revealing his cruel plan. In the summer of 1953, Hall and Bonnie began to shadow the Greenlease family to find their weaknesses. Initially, they intended to kidnap the family's daughter, but they soon realized that Bobby, the 6-year-old boy, would be an easier target. They knew that to demand a large ransom, they had to act quickly. Bonnie posed as Bobby's aunt to pick him up from school without raising suspicion. They then took Bobby to a drugstore where Hall was waiting. Hall took control, driving across state lines to an empty lot in Overland Park, Kansas. Bonnie got out of the car and walked a short distance, leaving Bobby with Hall, who had no intention of letting the boy survive. Initially, Hall planned to kill Bobby with a rope, but the rope was too short. Angrily, he punched the boy in the face, breaking one of his teeth. Bobby fell to the floor of the car, and Hall pulled out a gun, shooting him at close range. Less than 30 minutes after the abduction, Bobby was dead. Afterward, Hall and Bonnie knew they had to cover their tracks. They drove to Bonnie's house in St. Joseph, Missouri, wrapped Bobby's body in plastic, and buried him carefully in a pre-dug grave in the backyard. To mask the smell, they poured lime on the body and planted chrysanthemums on top, hoping to turn it into an innocuous garden. After receiving the ransom money, Hall and Bonnie fled to St. Louis. Hall bought 2 metal suitcases to hold the money and rented an apartment on Arsenal Street, overlooking Tower Grove Park. They drank to celebrate their successful plan. Late at night, when Bonnie was drunk and asleep, Hall saw an opportunity to carry out his next plan. In the middle of the night, Hall slipped $2,000 into Bonnie's wallet, took the remaining ransom money, and left the apartment. He took a taxi to Marlboro, where there was a farm called Sandra Lee, intending to use Sandra Lee as a decoy to mislead the police. Before he was caught, Hall arranged for Sandra Lee to fly to Los Angeles and sent a letter to the Greenlease family, leading the police in the wrong direction. Rumors circulated that Hall bought 2 garbage cans and a shovel, driving a rental car to the area near the Merrimack River in St. Louis County to hide the ransom money, but unable to find a suitable place, he kept it with him. Soon after, he was arrested. Once the truth came to light, the police acted swiftly. They tracked down and arrested Bonnie after Hall had left the apartment. Both were charged with murder and kidnapping. Faced with the weight of the law, they were convicted in October 1953. On October 7th, Bobby's body was found at the burial site. 2 days later, on October 9th, 1953, a solemn funeral was held at St. Agnes Catholic Church, where family and the community gathered to mourn the tragic death of the innocent boy. The case became a federal case. On October 30th, 1953, Hall and Bonnie stood trial and pleaded guilty. The jury took only 1 hour and 8 minutes to reach a verdict, recommending the death penalty. Less than a month later, on November 19, 1953, they accepted their fate without appeal. On December 18, 1953, Hall and Bonnie were executed together just 81 days after the kidnapping. At the time of their death, Bonnie was 41 years old and Hall was 34. The events following Bobby's kidnapping and murder took many unexpected turns. While the execution of Hall and Bonnie may have provided closure for the Greenlease family, it also uncovered a shocking truth. When Hall was arrested, only half of the ransom money, around $312,000, was recovered, with the rest mysteriously missing. It was believed that the police officers who arrested Hall had stolen the missing portion of the ransom. Initially, they denied the accusations, insisting that they had handed over all the money to the police station. However, they were eventually charged with federal offenses and convicted of perjury. On April 15, 1954, one officer was sentenced to 3 years in prison, while the other received 2 years. But the story didn't end there. In a surprising twist in 1962, after one of the officers died, the surviving officer revealed to the FBI that both he and crime boss Joe Costello had actually stolen half of the ransom money. The officer had remained silent out of fear of retaliation, only speaking the truth after his accomplice's death. In exchange for his cooperation, he was granted a pardon by the president in July 1965. The Bobby Greenlease case became not only a family tragedy, but also a complex story of greed, crime, and forgiveness within the legal system.